Come già preannunciato da Fabrizio questa mattina, purtroppo per motivi di salute il professor Henderson non potrà intervenire, quindi avremo 3 interventi, il primo dei quali ci viene dai Paesi Bassi, dall'Olanda, dal professor Peul, che è un neurochirurgo presso l'Università di Leiden e anche un master in epidemiologia. È stato a lungo e tuttora impegnato nella ricerca clinica in neurochirurgia, partecipando a dei trials sia nazionali che internazionali, ed è anche molto impegnato in un'attività di insegnamento. Presiede la società olandese di chirurgia spinale e ha partecipato a diverse review sistematiche nell'ambito della Cochrane Library. E quindi con molto piacere che do la parola al professor Peul.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation. And it's incredible how many people here are. So we are already 5 years busy with choosing wisely in our country, but we don't have this big audience. So thank you very much. I think it's a wise choice to have it here and with the nice weather. And I should have been here with short trousers, but now for serious, I'm 5 years busy with this movement in our country. I had a lot of fights, also very nice things. But I first will start with a few slides about my history, why I was involved as a medical specialist in choosing wisely, and why it's also interesting. Then I go to the Dutch movement, because our movement is more on evaluating and measuring, and I think that every country should have a topic where they are excelling in, so that in the international collaboration we can discuss that. And I also think I have to applaud, but you did this morning for Wendy Levinson, because she is, after Daniel Wolfson, she is the big prophet, or our princess, queen, trying to have this movement going. And I think you have to be applauded for that. So one applause for Wendy today. So I start with my conflict of interest. As you know, I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm a spine surgeon too, which is quite a discussion, also here in Switzerland and Italy. I received grants, and you might say, well, if you receive a grant from the government or insurance company, that is not a conflict of interest, but I discussed that. I think it's a conflict of interest, because the insurance company gives me grants, not for nothing. So that should be aware. My department receives a lot of grants, so without this kind of grants, I cannot survive in a university department. And I do some studies, and there are some financial grants by investigated initiated studies. And especially Medtronic is a company where a lot of problems have been in the United States in spine surgery, so you have to be aware where to discuss it. I do believe in scientific freedom, and I think choosing wisely is also freedom for the patient. And not only the decision for the surgeon to decide for surgery without connecting to the patient. So it should be based on evidence, and that's also my history. This is the area where I work. It's a very small part in Holland, between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. It's the University of Leiden, and I work in The Hague. And we work in 11 hospitals. In 3 hospitals we do complex neurosurgery, and the other hospitals we do herniated discs and spinal stenosis. So my history is about the low back surgery. This is the number of surgeries which are done by our group of 18 neurosurgeons in the area per year, which is quite a lot. A lot of cranial surgery, but also a lot of spine surgery. A lot of money is used for spinal implants in our area per year, and the cranial surgery is even more money. And for a lot of this kind of surgeries, we don't find evidence. If I look at my area, there's practice variation, and that's a problem. And medical doctors who don't think it's a problem, well, they have to go back to the books and look at the real evidence. So that's the reason why I say, well, we have to be aware of that. Even in my small region, which is very highly populated, part of Holland, there's practice variation. Practice variation between general practitioners, between neurologists, between neurosurgeons and general surgeons. You all know this publication in the BMG from a few years ago. They say, well, a lot of our treatments are not evidence-based. It means that more than 50% is not evidence-based or not beneficial. I think this is the most important area. This is not beneficial and should not be done anymore if you are in that area. But in this area, it's difficult. Do we know what is effective? And if it's more than 50%, if that is true, is more than 50% not effective what we are doing? I'm doubting that. But if we sit back in our surgical societies or medical specialist societies and we just let it go, then we are not talking with the people in insurance companies and governments anymore. So remembering the discussion at the end of the morning, this morning, I think we should discuss that and we should be aware. So there's no problem, no discussion about if you have a huge spinal primary bone tumor, then you need a big reconstruction. There's no randomized controlled trial to prove that, but you cannot prove that with a randomized trial if it's a primary bone tumor. But what if this patient has a spinal metastatic disease from liver cancer or colon cancer? Should we do this kind of surgery? So that's the background. And if you're getting old and difficult to walk, and you start bending forward, do we need to reconstruct this lady to have this kind of implant surgeries? This is very big surgery, and some of the people you are here in the room never did see this kind of surgery. This is rising every year. Every year we see more use of implants, and every year elderly people are operated upon. And this kind of surgery for scoliotic deformities is developed for young children with scoliotic deformities. Can we use that in 80 years and older? Is that effective? If I look at the United States use of implant cages, after the development of intravertebral cages, we see a huge rise. Total number, huge rise in surgeries. And if I looked at for Europe, also in this country, and I look at the big companies selling their implants for spine surgery, this is the variation we see. The red areas are the areas where a lot of spine surgery is being done, a lot of implants are used, and the lighter areas besides the white, because the white I don't have numbers from, that yellow is lower than red. So I can explain why in Swiss and Austria there are more use of implants, because you have more accidents in the skiing. So there is one proposal, but is the difference that big? I'm not very sure. But what about Holland and Belgium? The same culture, same kind of people, but 5 to 6 times more use of implants in Belgium per capita in the people. This is a slide. You don't have to go into detail, which was a publication by Rick Dio. Rick Dio is a very big epidemiologist in the United States, a very good guy, a good friend of mine. But he's also my competitor in science. So I always want to surpass him, but he's always 1 year or 2 years earlier, so that will stay at the time. This is publication in JAMA. If you were all spine surgeons, you should have read that. 2 weeks ago, I was at a big meeting in Copenhagen, Euro Spine Society, and I showed this slide, and I asked to raise hands who knew this paper. I saw 2 hands. 2 hands in a room of 500 people. So what's the problem here? What did he show? He published that there is a rise of complex fusion in elderly people in the United States for spinal stenosis, which is a good indication of surgery, but you don't have to use implants. You can simply decompress the spine. You don't have to use the implants. What he showed, based on insurance data, that if you do a complex fusion in a person of 70 or 80 years of age, that the risk of mortality is rising. Life-threatening complications are rising. And not a little bit, but a lot. And if you say, well, the number of mortality is always low, no, it's not low in the elderly people. So there's a high risk. What is the reaction of spine surgeons to this kind of publication? They walk out of the room if this presentation is shown. This is what is from the insurance data. So there's something wrong. When he was this morning talking about training, I'm also training people, and I say, well, everybody of you can be surgeons. Besides those people who have tremors, things like that. But you can become a surgeon. But you cannot learn when not to operate. So that's the reason, my background of choosing wisely, that's the reason why I started with this kind of research. And this is a very famous sentence, not from my side, but from another philosopher. I do believe in God, and everybody else should bring data. And I think that's really true for our treatments. So going back 20 years ago, I was a young neurosurgeon and I did a lot of low back surgery besides brain surgery. And this is the anesthesiologist who had time enough during my surgery to make drawings. I said, Wilco, I make some drawings. This is me, the doctor, and this is the patient. The patient has low back pain. The doctor starts treating screws, different kind of screws, minimal invasive screws, implant, IPD, that's completely new. The disc prosthesis, quite hip in our world. PDM, if you don't have good treatment in Holland, you can go to München, and they, especially if you're a young lady with low back pain. If it doesn't work on one level, we take one more level. IDET, warming of the disc, and the screw. This is the latest development from Spain a few years ago to fuse L5 to S1 by using a screw in a very dangerous area, very small incision, but you have to go pre-sacral and go to there. Risky surgery. I said this to the Spanish when they didn't want to do the trial. I asked the company, I'm running trials, I'm doing randomized trial, let me evaluate this kind of implant, it might be beneficial. They didn't want it. Well, this is what their reply was during a meeting a few years ago. And then, after all those surgeries, the patient comes back. I'm very happy because I have a very nice X-ray, but the patient still has low back pain. Low back pain doesn't resolve after surgery, only if you have an infection or a very collapsed disc and things like that. But most of the surgery for low back pain, there's no indication. So, and then Medtronic. What is Medtronic doing? They have good collars for their screws. Do you know why they have collars? If I ask the spine surgeons, they say, well, because of the size and because of this screw is another screw. But they're very nice collars. 20 years ago, all spine surgeries were done by orthopedic surgeons. They liked gray, strong, big hands. 20 years ago, some of the neurosurgeons, like myself, went from brain surgery to spine surgery. And what do neurosurgeons like? Instead of orthopedic surgeons, they like collars. And this is not a story. Medtronic and the other companies give collars to sell the screws. It's the same like going to the Indians and give them some mirrors and things like that. So that's happening. So that's the reason why we have failed back surgery syndrome. And this first person who said that was a guy from Sweden, Alf Nechamson, very good orthopedic guy, but nobody believed him. But there is no disease which is called maybe failed heart syndrome, but failed back syndrome, well, it's difficult to be equivalent. So there's no evidence for low back surgery. There is no evidence for sciatica, for referring pain, and that's the reason why we did. This is our trial. We looked at the UK guideline, surgery for nerve root pain by herniated discs, and compared that to wait and see. The UK guideline did surgery after 6 months, 5 to 6 months. In Holland, Netherlands, it was 6 weeks. So we compared that, and it is indeed, if you do early surgery, so after 6 to 12 weeks, you have a very quick recovery. But if you wait and use the UK guideline, 60% of our patients didn't need surgery anymore. And in 1 year, you have the same results. So that was evidence. This was the first evidence, together with the sports trial in the United States, that we don't need to operate everybody. And we should talk to our patients, not say, I'm a surgeon, I operate upon you, and the patient comes in. No, talk with each other. So when I published that, then during that period, there was not an economic crisis, but they looked at practice variation internationally and also in Holland. And what they saw is that if you have a very high population of disc surgery in your area, for instance, in the United States, in California, it is the biggest rate of spine surgery, then the costs are very high compared to areas where, for the same disease, less surgery is being done. So this is how we are discussing now. This is practice variation in our small country. So even in our small country, this is practice variation. And that was the start 5 to 6 years ago that I started with Choosing Wisely. Because I was confronted with this. We did these trials. And why was this happening? Can we explain the white area where nearly no surgery is being done in Holland compared to dark areas where a very high rate of spine surgery was being done? So we had to prove that. First of all, I was a neurosurgeon and said, well, it's not our fault people go to München, and that's Germany, so it's not our mistake. But they didn't believe that. Then we went to precision medicine. What is the guideline? What is good care and what is bad care? And we discussed that with patients and with doctors. It was easier to discuss with patients than to my colleagues, to be honest. So it took time. And then we said, well, you have care which should not be done anymore, herniated disc for surgery for low back pain, and care which should be done, shared decision making. And if you do that, then you can make choices, wise choices. And Daniel Wolfson was already quite busy with that, and Wendy was also. But I couldn't get the other people, neurologists, radiologists, surgeons, together. So I just started December 1.5 years ago, and we published it. So I think it's now 2013 that we just published, and we had newspapers. This is called Talking Instead of Cutting. Cutting is using a knife in your back. So these kind of interviews, and there were certain things which should not be done anymore. So what we did, we say, if you have low back pain only and a herniated disc, no surgery. Do not operate too early if a patient is recovering. And the patient should ask that question. If I have 6 weeks of pain, I want to be operated. But they should ask the question, is it really necessary now? But also, do not wait too long. Doing an MRI after your first herniated disc has been seen, no evidence for it. We published that in the New England Journal of Medicine. Nobody reads it, but it is not proven. And if you have pain in a nerve root which is not through the disc, it doesn't work. So these are the first five choices. And we use this window. And with this window, we can look at our patients and say, well, if you have 18 weeks of pain, you can decide for surgery. If you have between 6 and 12 weeks of pain, you might decide, but it's based on a choice of deciding for surgery or just longer wait and see. But that means that you have to talk to your patient a little bit more. And surgery is 1/4 of an hour. Talking to a patient is half an hour. A good talk to a patient is at least a half an hour. So that's difficult to implement. So this is my region. Going back to my region. Did I do something good? Well, I think I did something good because this is the area. I did audit my hospitals. I did audit my own surgeons. And this is the area this year. So less surgery, but still variation. There's something wrong still. So that's the reason I just not only try to convince people with talking, but also doing it in my own region. So that's the reason why I can work with medical specialists. And if you do that, then you need the government, insurance companies. This is the leader of our quality group, Mercer Daniels, and this is me. And we are a little bit laughing, not very good. She's laughing very hard because she liked it, because she's a nice scientist, but she's working for the government. It's a lot of money. And this is very nice. This is an old minister of defense, and he's working for the medical doctors' societies. So we have an umbrella society now, a federal organization with all the medical specialist organizations. And if I have to discuss with the Ministry of Health, he comes with me. So that was the start. What do we do? Describe good care, what was said this morning, implement it, and measuring and evaluation. And this is a part in which in our country also epidemiologists are very strong in. We are not very good in the science of shared decision making. So we have to improve that, look where the evidence is, discuss that with the patients, and also teach students, but also the doctors of my age and older, how do you do this kind of surgery, this decision making? So the Wise Choices campaign is first Wise Choices. We are now in a clinical practice variation. We are doing that now ourselves, not the insurance companies. We are looking at effective research, and the patient organization is looking at shared decision making. And I hope that some of the other countries in our collaboration will take the role and say, well, this is my area where I can work. So there are proven choices, and I don't have to repeat of this morning, so I don't repeat this slide. But I'm very happy that after the first 3 years with a lot of fights, I didn't believe anymore. And I thought, well, I'd go back to my surgical department and do my science and do my surgery, which I still do. But suddenly, things start rolling. So these are all societies who are now coming with their wise choices in our country. Some are copied from the United States and Canada and from neighboring countries. There are movements in Germany, in the UK, we are looking to each other. So it's moving. And now we have to have an organization. 4 pillars, structured, and a board. Wise choices, clinical practice variations, effectiveness, and shared decision making. Structured, including science. And that's the reason why I'm very happy that it happens now, because I have 20 years to work, and I can go on with that part of work. And the board is by doctors. We have a very good epidemiologist and director, decision-making experts, the organizations of patients, and healthcare society. We have now 9 million, yesterday I heard that, 9 million euros for the next 3 years for the 30 diagnoses to proceed to implement and measure, evaluate it. Insurance companies fund the registries. We collaborate with medical universities. They start to give money for that, for university surgery and treatments. And we have a program, Do or Do Not, now, with a lot of money in it. Thank you very much.